Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is August 2nd. On this day in 1993, in the small village of Savona, New York, 13-year-old Eric Smith lured 4-year-old Derrick Joseph Roby into the woods on his way to day camp. And then he brutally murdered him. What followed exposed the darkest corners of juvenile violence and left a family and a community forever changed. Today, we're discussing the murder of Derek Roby, a shocking case of child-on-child violence. Let's get started. On the morning of August 2nd, 1993, 4-year-old Derek Roby left his house, backpack in hand, ready to walk to summer camp. His mother, Derrick Robie, had always accompanied him, but that morning, Derek's baby brother was crying. He was being fussy, and so Doreen made a fateful decision. She let Derek walk alone. She had never done that before, but the camp was only about a block from their house, and it was even on the same side of the street. Plus, the village where they lived, Savona, was small and safe. It was the type of place where everyone knows everyone else. So before he left, Derek gave her a kiss. He said, "I love you, Mom." Doreen smiled, set it back, and watched him walk away. But it would be the last time she would ever see her son alive. Doreen went back to tending to her baby, but soon she got a call from camp that made her blood run cold. Derek had never arrived. A summer thunderstorm rolled in as neighbors, family, and volunteers began searching for the little boy. But by mid-afternoon, the frantic search was over, when Derek's body was found in a patch of woods not far from the park, and only a few hundred yards from his home. Nearby, they found his smashed banana and his Kool-Aid packet from his lunchbox. And what they discovered next would haunt even the most seasoned investigators. Derek had been strangled and beaten with a rock. He had also been sexually assaulted with a stick. Kool-Aid had been poured into his wounds. And that's when the Roby family and the entire village of Savona were plunged into a nightmare. At first, investigators were looking for a stranger, maybe someone passing through. After all, Savona was a small town and everyone knew and adored little Derek. But suspicion soon turned inward. Among those interviewed was a quiet 13-year-old boy named Eric Smith. Red-haired, freckled, and bullied by classmates, Eric lived just blocks away from Derek. He told investigators that he had seen Derek walking toward camp. But as he described Derek's clothing and lunchbox, his t-shirt, his bag, even the hood on his jacket, something felt off. Investigators tested Eric's story. When they placed them where he claimed to be, he couldn't have seen the details that he shared. That inconsistency became the thread that unraveled everything. On August 8th, just 6 days after the murder, Eric broke down. He was with his mother and grandfather when he confessed, saying, quote, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry. I killed that little boy." End quote. A family friend, Marlene Heskell, later remembered a chilling moment the night of the murder. Eric had asked her what would happen if it was another kid, meaning if it was another kid who killed Derek. And she said, well, that kid would need serious psychological help. And Eric just replied, "Oh, okay," and walked away. She said that she felt that night that he knew more about the crime than he was letting on. Eric later told investigators that he had encountered Derek while biking through the neighborhood. He led the boy into the woods under the pretense of showing him a shortcut. There, he restrained him, struck him repeatedly with a rock, and assaulted him. During questioning, one officer handed Eric a drink similar to the Kool-Aid found at the scene. Eric became visibly shaken and defensive and accused officers of thinking he was guilty. But 6 days later, his confession confirmed what they had feared. The killer wasn't a stranger. It was a neighborhood boy. The trial began in mid-1994 and lasted for 3 weeks. The courtroom was packed with reporters, neighbors, and 2 grieving families who would never be the same. The Robies sat through every painful detail, often unable to look as the crime was being described. And the prosecution built a compelling case. They focused on the premeditated nature of the attack. Eric had selected his victim, lured him, and followed through with a shocking amount of cruelty. Forensic experts testified about the extent of Derek's injuries. Eric's defense, led by Kevin Bradley, didn't deny the crime. Instead, they argued diminished capacity. Eric, they said, suffered from intermittent explosive disorder, which had been worsened by years of bullying and social isolation. Psychologists painted the picture of a deeply disturbed boy who had been failed by every system meant to protect him. At the end of the trial, the jury deliberated, and on August 16, 1994, Eric Smith was found guilty of second-degree murder. He showed no emotion as the verdict was read. A month later, he was sentenced to the maximum for a juvenile offender, 9 years to life in prison. Dale Roby, Derek's father, later told reporters, quote, "We will never forgive. You don't forgive someone who murders your child. We're not capable of that," end quote. Eric was transferred to a juvenile detention center and later to an adult prison when he turned 21. He applied for parole 10 times over the years. Each time, Derek's parents spoke against his release, and each time the board agreed, until 2021. In October of that year, after 28 years behind bars, Eric Smith was granted parole. He was released in February 2022 under supervision and moved to Queens, New York. The Robies were devastated. Doreen said, quote, "We live with this every day. You never get over something like this. It doesn't go away," end quote. The case became a national touchstone. It raised enduring questions about how the justice system should handle juveniles who commit violent crimes. Should their age offer protection? Or should the brutality of the crime be the deciding factor? To some, Eric was a boy in crisis who needed help. To others, he was a remorseless killer whose age should never overshadow his actions. Today, Savona remembers Derrick Robie not just as a victim, but as a bright, joyful boy who loved dinosaurs and made everyone smile. The murder of Derek Roby is a haunting reminder of how violence can come from the most unexpected places, even a sleepy little village where neighbors knew each other by name. It forces us to ask difficult questions about justice, forgiveness, and whether some acts are simply beyond redemption. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Derek's story compelling, please subscribe, share, and review this podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!